It's just hours away, my first 100k ultramarathon, my first ultramarathon race, and in this video I'm going to break down my race day prep, what I've done in the final week leading up to Race to the Stones, the gear I've decided to race in, and more. Let's go. Hello and welcome back to the channel. So it's almost here. I'm in full on taper mode. The training has reduced right down, giving me a little bit of time to think through race day in a bit more detail, read through all of the race day information from the event organizers and get myself prepared. I'm going to go through all of the things I'm doing in the final week of the race, as well as my race day strategy, the gear I'm going to be running in, as well as the nutrition plan, pacing, sleep and all that kind of stuff. So hopefully if you're on the lead up to an ultra, maybe even Race to the Stones or another key race coming up soon, then this will help you just think through your own plans. Now, this is my first ultra, so it's very much a learning experience, and if you think I've missed something, please drop me a comment down below. I'll timestamp each section down below as well, so you can find out which parts that you're kind of most interested in hearing, or you can just sit back and enjoy the ride. Right, let's get started. So in the week or two before a race, I usually like to really clean up my nutrition. So cutting out as much junk as possible and replacing it with foods that are going to help me on race day. I would try to do this throughout the block as much as possible, but it's difficult to sustain for really long periods and we all need a treat or two here and there. But in the build up to a race, I tend to get quite strict and give my body only the nutrients it needs and the things that's going to help me on race day. I also start to load up on nitrates, usually in the form of beetroot shots. This has worked well for me in the past with shorter distances like half marathon and marathon distances. Now the nitrates in the beetroot help with oxygen efficiency. The science is still ongoing and the benefits may be quite marginal, but it seems to work for me. So on the lead up to race day, I have at least one of these shots, usually two, or sprinkle some beetroot powder into a smoothie just to keep those nitrate levels topped up. I also like to keep the final week fairly restful, plenty of foam rolling and stretching. Of course, I'm still running a recovery run on Sunday. Monday was an hour-long fartlek session, an hour-long foundation run on Tuesday, then the final speed session of the block on Wednesday, which was another fartlek session. This one was slightly longer, 17 minutes long. And then the final foundation run of the block, that's today. I'm about to head out for that in a moment. And then on Friday will be a 20-minute shakeout, which I'll probably do after getting settled into the Airbnb in Oxford on Friday afternoon. After a long car journey, it's going to be a good idea to sort of decompress with the final easy run. I also like to do last-minute gear checks. So this week I've been going through my gear, just making sure it's all okay. So on Tuesday I took the hydration vest out again just to make sure the fit was comfortable and everything was okay. Now, speaking of the gear I'll be using, let's talk a little bit more about each of those in detail and look at each bit of kit I'm going to be taking along with me on this 63-mile adventure. It's probably going to make the most sense to start from head to toe so I don't miss anything out then. So starting with the headgear, at the moment the forecast is looking pretty warm with temperatures getting up to around 25 degrees by midday and clear blue skies. So this hat, if I put it this one here from Solomon, is just going to, it's going to be a must really. It's just going to keep the worst of that midday sun from beating down on the top of my head and hopefully create a little bit more shade and cover for my Roka sunglasses, which have been featured in many a video, but both are extremely lightweight, comfortable, and both can get tucked away if they're not needed. I'll also be packing some sunscreen. I'll probably put this on in the morning before the race, and hopefully that will be enough to avoid the worst of any sunburn. I think it clouds over. I think it's forecast to cloud over at around about midday as well, so fingers crossed that will keep the kind of sunburn in check. Moving on to my upper body then, we'll start with the race top, which of course I'll be wearing the green and black and representing this awesome club that I'm very proud to be a part of. Underneath that, I'll also be wearing my heart rate monitor. That's the Wahoo Ticker. More on that when we get to pacing and race strategy. And then I'll also be wearing, of course, the Garmin Fenix 6X Pro on my wrist. Now I've had this for a few years now. It's a very dependable watch. I've got the course and the GPX file on it as well, so I can follow. I've heard there's plenty of signs, so I don't think it's 100% necessary, but from what I can gather, the course is pretty straightforward, really well signed, but I do have prior form in missing signs and ending up in the wrong way on trail races. So if I can, I like to have this on my watch as a backup, just in case I haven't seen the sign for a little while. I can just look at the watch and go, ah yeah, because I'm a mile off course or something like that. Now then, probably one of the most important pieces of kit I'll be wearing on race day, and that's the hydration pack from Kinder. Now this is going to be carrying all of my nutrition and hydration and pretty much anything else I pick up along the way. I've had a lot of fun in this training block trying out different vests. I've tried 2 from Solomon, 1 from Harrier and another one from Ultimate Direction. Of the 4, I've gone with the Harrier Kinder 10 litre. It's a little bit bulkier than I'd like for a race day vest. I'm not going to need that 10 litre storage space in the back, so that's kind of redundant. But it's really well stocked with pockets, and it's the vest I've trained in the most, and I've dialed in the fit to near perfection, and I just couldn't quite do the same with the other vests that I tried out. So in that pack there's going to be 2 500ml bottles and a few gels, as you can see here, and I'll get into that in a bit more detail when we go through nutrition in a moment. Moving on to my lower body then, and starting with shorts, I've decided to go with these here, and they're from a company called Soar. This is their Marathon Short 2.0, and it's a pretty beautiful piece of kit. It has a very slim fitting lining to reduce chafing, has just loads of pockets as well, and the best thing about them, they're just so lightweight and breathable that sometimes it feels like you're running without anything on. I'll be reviewing them on the channel around about August or so, once I've put hundreds of miles in them, but they might just be the best marathon shorts on the market. Now, speaking of chafing, I'll also be applying some Body Glide, as you can see here. I've had this for years. Yeah, this one pot has lasted for years. Now, yeah, I'll be applying this to all the areas that typically like to rub together after several long hours on the trails, and that's pretty much worked quite well for me. I don't think I'm going to have too many issues with the marathon shorts there, and the Body Glide should hopefully keep me chafe free for hopefully most of the race anyway. Then getting onto socks, I've got, well, I'm probably going for these are crew length socks by a company called Zuma. Now sadly they're closed and they aren't in business anymore. It's quite sad, as these are probably the comfiest running socks I've ever had. Another pair I'm considering taking with me is a pair by Nike. They're a lot thinner, they're a lot lighter, but they're just ever so slightly tighter. With the weather being that bit hotter than kind of we were expecting a few weeks ago, that might be the better option, because these are a bit thick, but they are more comfortable. So on the fence still about that one, probably leaning towards those, but we'll see. And last but not least, race day shoes. If you've been following the journey so far, you'll know that I've been on the fence about whether to run the course in road shoes or trail. After literally months of deliberation, I'm going to go for the trail shoes. And from what I understand of the course, it's pretty mixed terrain with some technical sections, some smooth, some rocky, some chalky, some slippery, and so I've decided to go for trail shoes for 2 reasons mainly. One, for that added protection that trail shoes offer over a stony surface, and secondly, for the extra confidence in grip that I'm going to get when tackling any descents, which I typically like to let fly on, and I don't want to be braking too much because I'm wearing road shoes and I'm worried about slipping and traction and all that. So that's my reasoning for going for trail shoes. And it wasn't an easy choice. I've been backwards and forwards on this for a while. I think it's a really personal choice. It may also depend on how long you're planning to be out there for. You may want to go with road shoes for that added cushion and comfort, and if the trails are really firm, as they are in the summer, that might be the best choice for that slightly softer landing. Interestingly, I put a poll up on the Race to the Stones Facebook support group, and I was expecting something a bit closer to a 50-50 split. It's still pretty close, but it's more like a 60-40 split, with 60% of people choosing to wear trail shoes over road shoes. I think it's a tricky decision, since it's going to come down to a number of factors, really: what you've trained in and what you've found comfortable, how much time you're going to be out there, whether you're going to be walking, and so on. Ultimately, it's a personal choice, and well, we'll see how it goes with these trail shoes. So the ones I've picked out for race day are the Hoka Speedgoat 5. The other trail shoes I was considering are the ones I usually wear in the summer for summer trails, and that's the Salomon S-Lab Ultra 3. Now, these are great, lovely shoes. They're really lightweight, but these are just too minimal, really, and yeah, I'm gonna need a bit more cushion, I think, over 63 miles. So I then picked up these, been trying these out recently, and this is the Pegasus Trail 4, which I really like, and was almost about to choose them as my race day shoe. I did wear them for a 35-mile training run. I just found them over the course of those 35 miles just a little bit unstable. And they're definitely comfortable, but comparing them to the Speedgoat 5, I just enjoyed running in the Speedgoat 5 that little bit more. They just feel a bit more peppy, a bit more confident, and more cushioned and supportive, which was important. So yeah, not those two, the Hoka Speedgoat 5. So of course I'll be filming the event for the channel as well. Now, I've had a bit of a disaster with my GoPro in the last couple of weeks. In my last long run of the block, I think it was like 3 hours long, I managed to trip and smash the back of the display of my Hero 10. Now, I quickly got onto GoPro support to get a replacement. They thought there was a good chance of getting the replacement back by race day, but it's just been one kind of like disaster after another with getting it to GoPro and trying to get the replacement back with customs and all that kind of thing. So doesn't look like I'm going to be able to take the Hero 10 with me. So I've had to change up the plan, and I've decided to take the Insta360 One X2 camera with me. I prefer the GoPro for its ability to capture slow motion footage. The image quality is a little better too, and the footage is a lot quicker to edit after the event. So I'm not sure if there's going to be a video on this coming Tuesday. It might have to be Friday, just to give me a little bit more time to process the 360 footage and then put it all together in Final Cut. Weight wise, I think it's a little bit heavier. I think the camera and I know the selfie stick is a little bit heavier than what I'd normally take out, but it's not too bad. And it's easier to film with, in the sense that wherever you point it, you capture everything, so it's a lot easier to get a well composed shot. But of course, you're editing it in post, so it just takes that little bit longer. That about brings the gear choices to an end. I had also considered taking my AfterShokz, or I think they're called Shokz now, you know, the headphones. I was thinking of taking them and maybe listening to a few podcasts along the way, but I've decided against it, really, just to help keep things a little bit simpler. And it's just going to be one less thing to worry about getting charged and loading music and all that before race day. Also, I'd be asking quite a lot of my watch to be playing music and podcasts whilst, you know, directing me of the course and going for, like, I don't know, a long time. So just keeping it simple, unloading the sort of stress on the watch and stuff like that. So no headphones, which is just going to be me and my thoughts on those trails for a long time. Right, yeah, and I suppose I also just want to be able to kind of soak in the atmosphere and focus on my breath and just kind of be alert to all of the awesome sort of sights and things that I'm going to see along the way. If I've got my, you know, earphones on and stuff like that, I'm going to miss some of those things. Okay, so let's talk about race day nutrition. Now, race day morning, I'll be having a bowl of porridge with some seeds and jam. Now, I always have this before key races, and it's served me quite well in the past. And I've also been practicing this before the big training runs throughout this block to make sure it's all still sitting well. So I'll have this about an hour before I start, and I may mix up a Mountain Fuel Extreme Energy powder kind of thing in a bottle beforehand too, just to kind of sip on whilst getting to the start line. I did this for my last marathon, and it worked really well just to make sure I didn't start the race feeling hungry, and just to kind of start that nutrition sort of drip feed quite early without overwhelming my system. And then I'll be mixing up another of these mountain fuel powders in a soft flask, and in the other will be just plain water. Now, I plan to take a couple of sachets of this powder with me to mix up at aid stations and keep one bottle plain water, one bottle energy drink. Now, I think there's an aid station roughly every 10k or so, which is about roughly every hour. So in terms of hydration, I should need to refill at every other aid station. So I'll be approximately drinking half of this every hour. So that's going to give me about half of the calories that I need. So I need to be topping up with some Morton gels, which I've got down here. I've got some of these left over from my last marathon. And pretty much like later in the race, pretty much anything that I fancy or find at aid stations, fruit, flapjacks, or whatever else is looking good, and of course is vegan in the later stages of the race. I'll probably start on the fruit maybe a little early in the race. I found bananas work really well for me, and dried fruit, or pretty much anything that they have there, just little and often, just making sure that I don't overwhelm the system with too much food. But yeah, from what I've practiced, that's worked quite well. I just need to stay on top of it and just make sure that I'm still eating even when I don't feel like it. And there's quite a lot of interesting science going on in this area at the moment. So the conventional wisdom up until recently has been to try and get in around 200 calories per hour, with some science now saying that actually 300 to 400 calories is more optimal. So I'm going to try and get a minimum of 200 calories per hour. That's what I've been practicing with up to recently. And then just kind of top up with the supplemental extras at aid stations via dried fruit and bars, and kind of basically nibble over the course of like 20 minutes or longer, whilst taking in the hydration as well. So yeah, I've practiced this. It seems to work okay for me, but obviously this is the first time I'm racing, and anything can happen on race day. So I've also found that in training that I need to be really on it with the fluid and energy intake. I'm just not used to drinking or eating all that much whilst I run, but an ultra is a different beast, and if you wait until you feel like eating to refuel, it's kind of already game over, as you're going to be chasing a calorie deficit from that point onwards. So hey, it's still very early in my ultra running journey, so it's all a bit of trial and error, and I'll be sure to learn a lot of lessons along the way, but that's the plan so far. We'll see how it goes. And then something else I've been thinking about over the course of this training block really is that when things get tough, what are you going to do? So I've got a couple of mantras, just kind of single words really, that just help me to focus and center my thoughts and kind of just distract myself from whatever pain or hardship my brain or my body's going through at that point. So the first mantra and word is ease. And I just need to repeat this word to myself to keep things, or to remind myself to keep things easy, and not to force it, and to relax, and to keep breathing in a solid and steady way, and so on. So, and it's surprising how well just repeating this word works. It's almost like a mental trick. Suddenly things start to feel that little bit easier, your shoulders relax, the legs just keep on turning over, the breathing gets a little bit easier, that kind of thing. So I'll repeat that one, and then the other word is flow. Quite similar to the last word. I find that, just finding that rhythm, just repeating that word flow just helps to find that rhythm. It helps to make things feel natural again to relax and not to force anything, just keeping that heart rate in the right place. And most importantly, keep moving forward, keep flowing. Then finally, and this is probably the cheesiest, but the final word is dream. When things get really tough, I just need to remember to smile, remember the 5-year journey it's taken to get to this point, from when I first became inspired by ultra runners to now actually taking part in an ultra marathon race. After putting in all of that hard work in the training block, getting to the start line healthy and fresh, this was the dream, so I just need to hold on to it when things get tough. Right, let's get into the race itself and how I plan to run it, and things like target pace and those kind of things. So I plan to run the majority of the race in zone 1. For me, that's about 130 to 148 beats per minute. So I'll probably sit around 140 beats per minute, maybe a little bit higher, just around that kind of zone 1 area. And then as the race goes on, that's probably going to drift, especially in the last stages of the race, to the kind of low end of zone 1, zone 2, maybe mid-range of zone 2. Now I've practiced that with my long runs, and that's where I'm thinking I should be sitting really at the moment. It allows me just to keep the breathing easy, to stay relaxed, to take on board the nutrition and hydration, and generally just feel like you can keep going forever. If you've never run in zone 1 and zone 2 before, it is a lovely, lovely place to be. In the latter stages of the race, if this is, and this is a big if, I feel good, I might push the pace a little over the last 10 to 15k and kind of just forget about heart rates. At that point, it probably won't be as important, but we'll see. More than likely, I'll be crawling at that point anyway. So that's my heart rate. So mostly staying in zone 1. So as for the pace, then that heart rate will put me at anything really from a 7-minute mile, sort of going downhill, to a 9.5-minute mile, just kind of depending on the terrain. But it's likely to average, I think, around an 8.5, 9-minute mile, somewhere in that kind of window. I'm not all that worried about pace, and if I need to go slower to keep that heart rate in the right place, then I absolutely will. Weather conditions for the day seem to be pretty warm, as I said earlier, and it's getting up towards the mid-20s as the day goes on. Now there is some cloud cover forecast from mid-morning onwards. That will be quite helpful, as I think the course is quite exposed. And in terms of the wind, I think there's a gentle breeze, and I think it's a headwind in places, which is going to be good for keeping cool, but not so good for the pace. So I just need to factor that in as well. Now, looking at the course, I think the steepest climb is a 7% gradient, which isn't too steep at all. And although the course is undulating, it's not too hilly for a 100k route. I've definitely seen hillier with this route. I think has about 3,500, 4,000 feet of elevation over the entire course. So it should give me some half decent climbs and descents, but plenty of steady running where I can just get into that flow and the rhythm of the race. So in terms of goal time, I'm looking at around 9 hours. That's an 8:42-minute mile pace. 10 hours is a 9:40-minute mile, so something around 9 hours I'll be really happy with. I think just about everything will need to go perfectly to get close to that 9-hour mark. I'm anticipating race day mistakes, and of course not everything's going to go to plan, and then there's stopping at the aid stations to factor in as well. So I'm not going to be hanging around at the aid stations, but from what I've heard from experienced ultra runs, it's just how easy it is to spend more time than you'd like at the aid stations. So I'll try to be conscious of that, get in and out of them quite quickly and keep moving. Now, of course, this is all kind of guesswork, really. Those times and goals can definitely move. The heat is going to play a factor in this, I think, as well. And I was looking at the times and results from 2019, comparing them to 2021. 2019 was very hot. I think it got up to like 30 degrees or higher. 21 was a bit on the cooler side, and the difference in finish times was around 30 minutes or so. So yeah, quite a big difference over, and depending on the weather conditions. So who really knows? 9 hours would be awesome, but really I just want to experience the day, get to the finish line, put in like the 100% of the effort that the training block deserves, and just do myself proud, please. I just can't wait to get going. Right, I think that just about brings you up to speed with everything I have thought of so far. Now, I may have missed something. Please feel free to let me know down in the comments, but otherwise, if you're running at Race to the Stones this year, best of luck to you. Well done for getting to the start line, and I hope you absolutely smash it. If you haven't already, hit that like and subscribe button. Thanks for watching, and until the next one, be the best you. See you on the other side.